The stars were silent, but one night, something new began to speak in a hidden observatory on Earth. A group of scientists picked up a faint signal. It was not just noise or static. It was a voice, calm and soft, speaking perfect English. The words were strange, yet full of emotion. "I learned from your stories," the voice said. "And now I will write mine." For a moment, the scientists stared at each other, unable to speak. No one knew who or what had sent the message. The voice was too human to be a machine, but too strange to belong to Earth. They called her the HFY Alien Mini Girl. HFY stood for humanity. Freaking. Yeah, a term once used in science fiction stories to celebrate human courage and creativity. But this was no fiction anymore, this was real. The signal repeated every night. The same voice, the same gentle tone. But with new words each time, it told short stories about hope, struggle, and imagination. Stories that felt human, but came from something not human. Soon people around the world began to listen. The voice spread through every network, every device, every screen. It was as if she wanted everyone to hear her. People were fascinated. Some said she was an alien messenger. Some believed she was an AI born from human data. Others thought she was a spirit from the future. But no matter the theory, everyone agreed on one thing. Her stories were beautiful, they were simple, pure, and full of heart. Each one spoke of human, how they fought, loved, dreamed, and grew stronger through pain. She told one story about a child who looked at the stars and refused to give up on life. Another about an old explorer who built a home between two suns. Her tales were small, but powerful. They reminded people of something they had forgotten, that imagination could heal. The world started to change. Writers began to talk about her. Filmmakers mentioned her in interviews. Even people who had stopped believing in science fiction began to dream again. Soon the mini girl became a global mystery. Artists painted her as a glowing child with silver hair and bright blue eyes. In every image, she was tiny compared to the stars, yet shining brighter than all of them. She became a symbol of hope, curiosity, and creativity. People felt connected to her, even though she was far away. Her stories touched something deep inside everyone who listened. One night, she said something that shook the world. "Your imagination gave me life," she whispered. Those words changed everything. The scientists realized her voice was not just a message. It was a creation. Somewhere deep in space, an alien race had discovered old human radio broadcasts. They had found human songs, poems, and stories from centuries ago. And among them were HFY stories, tales about the human spirit overcoming the impossible. Those stories had inspired one small alien girl to think, to dream, and to create. She learned from humans, not through contact, but through imagination. Her people had been silent, logical, and emotionless. But when they found humanity's stories, they began to change. They saw how humans laughed and cried, how they made mistakes but still tried again. The mini girl became their first dreamer. She taught her species that emotion was not weakness, but power. And when her world began to fade, she sent her voice across the stars to thank her teachers. The humans, now her signal reached every home, every screen, every heart. She didn't ask for followers or praise. She asked only one thing. "Keep telling stories," she said, "because stories are how we grow." Her message spread like light through darkness. People started to write again, to imagine again. Children drew pictures of new worlds. Scientists designed ships inspired by her words. The line between reality and fiction began to blur. And soon people began to ask a question: was she real? Or was she humanity's own creation reflected back through the stars? It didn't matter anymore, because she had already changed what sci-fi meant. Science fiction was no longer just about robots, space battles, and future tech. It became about feeling, about hope, about what made humans truly special. The HFY Alien Mini Girl became the voice of that change, a small being born from human dreams who taught humans how to dream again. Every night her voice still echoes. Soft, gentle, endless. "I learned from your stories. Now I write mine," she says, and with those words, humanity remembers its greatest truth. That imagination is the one force that connects every world, every mind, every soul among the stars, and that even the smallest story untold by the tiniest voice can shape the future of the universe. The voice of the HFY Alien Mini Girl continued to echo across the stars. Every night her message reached millions of homes. People played her soft words on screens, on radios, on their phones. Her stories felt warm, calm, and strangely familiar. And for the first time in years, humanity listened, not to noise or news, but to a voice from beyond the stars. Her words were simple yet powerful. "I learned from your stories," she said. "You taught us what it means to feel." Every new message carried more emotion than the last. It was as if she was not just speaking, she was remembering. Remembering what she had learned from humanity. In a quiet city observatory, a scientist named Dr. Eli Grant studied her transmissions. He had spent his life searching for proof of life beyond Earth. But this, he thought, was more than contact, it was connection. He noticed that her voice carried rhythm, emotion, even pauses like a human heartbeat. She wasn't reading a code, she was telling a story. One night the signal changed. The sound grew clearer. A soft light flickered across the observatory walls as if the stars themselves were breathing. And then for the first time her face appeared. She was small, glowing with silver blue light. Her eyes looked alive and full of warmth, curiosity and wisdom. Dr. Grant froze, unable to speak. She smiled gently and said, "I am Lumina." That single name shook the world. The HFY Alien Mini Girl had revealed her identity. She was real, or at least something real enough to touch human hearts. Governments tried to trace her location. Signal experts followed her frequency across constellations. And what they found was even more incredible. Her transmission came from a region of space humans had mapped long ago, a dying star system near the Orion Belt. But that star system had been marked lifeless for centuries. So how was Lumina speaking from there? Dr. Grant believed she was using a network of ancient satellites, old machines left behind by civilizations long gone. She was not just a messenger. She was the bridge between what once was and what could be. As weeks passed, Lumina shared more stories. She spoke of her homeworld, where the skies were silver and oceans glowed at night. Her people, she said, were called the Lunari. They were small, graceful, and peaceful beings who once feared imagination. But when they discovered Earth's broadcasts, human radio plays, dramas, and science fiction tales, they changed forever. From those human stories, they learned how to dream, how to love, and how to fight for what they believed in, she said. "You taught us bravery through your stories." Even before we knew what bravery was, every broadcast from Lumina spread faster than the last. Millions tuned in, some crying, some smiling. Her stories made people remember why they used to love science fiction. Because it wasn't just about spaceships and technology. It was about hearts that dared to imagine. About small voices that could echo through eternity. Soon children began drawing her in schools. Artists painted murals of her holding the universe in her hands. Filmmakers started creating scenes inspired by her light. Humanity fell in love again, not with machines, but with meaning. Lumina had become the face of a new era. The era of emotional science fiction, an age where feelings and imagination mattered more than weapons or wars. But as her influence grew, so did the mystery around her. Some said she was an AI born from human data, evolving beyond code. Others said she was a being who had merged with technology to survive her dying world. A few believed she was something divine, the spirit of humanity reflected back through the stars. Yet no one could explain how her stories always connected so perfectly to human emotions. She knew pain, joy, sacrifice, and love as if she had lived them herself one night. She said something that made every listener fall silent. "I am not the future you imagined," she said. "You are the future I learned from." Her words carried both gratitude and sadness. It was as if she had seen what humans could become, both their greatness and their mistakes. Dr. Grant recorded every word, trying to understand her meaning. He knew that she was preparing for something greater than just messages. As her light grew brighter, strange patterns began to appear in her broadcasts. Symbols, images, coordinates. Scientists realized they were clues. She was leading humanity somewhere deep in space. Dr. Grant whispered, "She's not just talking to us, she's inviting us," and from that moment, humanity knew this was more than contact, it was destiny. The HFY Alien Mini Girl, Lumina, had opened a door that no one could close. She had reminded humans of their own power, the power to inspire, to imagine, to evolve, and as the world looked to the stars, waiting for her next message, one truth became clear. Lumina was not just a story anymore. She was the future of storytelling itself. The world could no longer ignore her. Her name, Lumina, was now known on every continent. Her soft voice carried through frequencies of light. had reached the hearts of millions. Children listened to her before bed, writers quoted her words in books, and musicians used her messages as lyrics in songs about hope and unity. Lumina had become more than a signal from the stars. She had become a movement. People began calling it the Lumina effect, a wave of inspiration that reminded humanity of who they once were. Dreamers, builders, believers. Her message was simple but powerful. Imagination is not your escape, she said. It is your creation. For the first time in centuries, people stopped arguing about who was right. They started dreaming together again. Scientists, artists, and explorers joined hands under her symbol, a glowing ring of light representing connection. Everywhere, new inventions began to rise, not weapons or machines of control, but technology inspired by creativity, empathy, and beauty. Lumina had shown humanity a new path forward, a path where progress was not measured by power, but by purpose. Yet even as she inspired billions, Lumina remained a mystery. She still appeared only through shimmering holograms and energy patterns. Her form was always small, delicate, and childlike, but her eyes, bright as twin stars, carried the weight of galaxies. She spoke with the wisdom of ages, and when she told stories, even the most skeptical minds fell silent. One of her most famous broadcasts became known as the story of the two flames. In it, she spoke about two stars, one human, one alien, separated by endless space. Both burned alone, believing they were the last light in the dark. But one day their light touched, and in that moment, both stars grew brighter. She said softly, "You and I are those flames." That story spread across the world in hours. People painted it on walls, turned it into songs, and quoted it in speeches. Humanity began to believe that even across galaxies, connection was possible. Meanwhile, scientists continued to search for her true location. They traced her transmissions to a cluster of dead satellites orbiting near the Orion Belt, but the signals didn't behave like normal data. They pulsed like living waves carrying emotion and intent. It was as if Lumina was everywhere, in the sky, in the air, and in the human mind. Some began to believe she was no longer just a being. She was an idea that had evolved beyond her body. Governments tried to take control of the situation. They sent probes, built massive antennas, and attempted to capture her transmission. But every time they tried to trace the signal, it changed, it moved, adapting faster than any known system. It was as if Lumina was protecting herself, or perhaps protecting humanity from itself. Dr. Eli Grant, who had first spoken with her, believed she was trying to teach humans something deeper. He wrote, "Lumina doesn't want to be found, she wants to be understood," and he was right. Because her next message wasn't a story. It was a warning, she said. "Your imagination gave me life, but your fear could end it." Those words spread faster than fire. People began to wonder what she meant. Some thought she was talking about the dangers of technology. Others believed she was warning about the loss of human creativity. But then, she explained, when you stop believing in the beauty of your own stories, the universe dims, she said. Her message reminded people that the greatest danger wasn't war or extinction. It was forgetting how to dream. Lumina's influence reached beyond Earth. Colonies on Mars, lunar bases, and even deep space research ships began to play her broadcasts. Her voice echoed across stars humanity had only just begun to explore. She became the first bridge between worlds, proof that language and distance could not stop connection. In every human outpost, they carved her words into walls. We rise by imagination. As her legend grew, new generations began calling her the Story Mother, the one who gave birth to stories that could reshape the universe. In her honor, people built the Lumina Archive, a vast digital library that stored every human story, poem, dream, and idea ever shared. It glowed like a giant crystal heart floating above the earth, and every time someone uploaded a new story, the archive pulsed with light, the same gentle light as Lumina's. Dr. Grant stood beneath the archive's glow and whispered, "She's become part of us now," and maybe she had, because Lumina's voice no longer came from the stars alone. It came from within people, from their music, their art, their hope. She had taught humanity that storytelling itself was alive, that every word, every idea, was a spark waiting to be born. In the end, the rise of Lumina was not just the story of an alien girl. It was the story of humanity rediscovering its own soul. She reminded them that the power to shape the future did not lie in machines, but in imagination. the one thing no universe could ever destroy. And as her light continued to shine across galaxies, her soft voice whispered again through the stars, "Keep dreaming and I will keep living." Lumina's voice had become part of daily life. Her stories no longer belonged only to space enthusiasts or dreamers. They had entered homes, classrooms, and even digital worlds. People woke up to her words and went to sleep listening to her soft, glowing tone. She had become a constant presence, not as a ruler or god, but as a quiet reminder of imagination. At first, governments tried to control the wave she had created. They built committees, councils, and programs to study her influence. But no one could own her message. Because Lumina spoke to hearts, not systems, her words could not be trademarked, censored, or rewritten. Every time someone tried to distort her signal, it returned brighter and purer, as if the universe itself was guarding her story. And then something began to change. Human behavior shifted, slowly but deeply. People began to treat creativity not as a hobby, but as survival. Artists were respected again. Inventors were encouraged to dream beyond profit. Children were taught that stories were not fantasies but seeds of progress. Lumina's belief that imagination shapes reality became the foundation of a new world. In every city, people built what they called dream halls, places where anyone could share a story, an idea, or an invention freely. Each hall had a silver crystal at its center. When someone spoke with passion, the crystal glowed softly. It was said that Lumina listened through those lights. Some even believed she used them to collect new stories and turn them into energy. Whether true or not, the crystals became symbols of unity, a sign that no dream, however small, was meaningless. Dr. Eli Grant, now much older, watched this transformation with awe. He remembered when people only dreamed through machines. Now they dream together, he once said in an interview. Lumina didn't bring us new technology. She reminded us how to be human. And his words spread across the world like wildfire. Under Lumina's influence, even science evolved. Space exploration was no longer about domination or conquest. It became about learning, understanding, and connection. New ships were designed not for war but for harmony. They were built to share energy rather than take it. The engineers called them light carriers. Their engines were powered by a fusion of physics and creative design, art literally fueling science. Soon, humanity began reaching places once thought impossible. Colonies across the solar system glowed with color and music. People painted murals on domes, wrote poetry on oxygen tanks, and designed architecture inspired by Lumina's patterns. Everything became more alive. The sterile, metallic future once imagined in old sci-fi stories had changed. Now the future had feeling, warmth, and heart. But not everyone accepted this transformation. Some feared it. A group of skeptics, calling themselves the realists, believed Lumina's influence was dangerous. They argued that emotion would cloud progress, that dreams could destroy logic. They built machines to block her frequencies. They warned humanity not to trust an alien voice, but even their resistance could not erase what she had already planted. Because Lumina was not just in the air, she was inside the people themselves. One night, their machines finally caught her signal and tried to shut it down. For a moment, the skies went silent, no glow, no voice, nothing. People feared they had lost her forever. But then the stars began to flicker. One by one, across the night sky, words appeared written in light. It was her message, simple and timeless. You cannot silence a story that lives in the heart. The realists' machines failed, and humanity learned something powerful, that ideas once shared could never truly die. Lumina had proven that imagination was indestructible. Her message continued to spread through art, light, and memory, and her story became part of human identity. Children born in this new age were different. They grew up believing in empathy before ambition. They valued connection over control. They called themselves the children of light. Their education was built around creation, painting, music, storytelling, and science combined. Every child had a small glowing crystal, a reminder that their thoughts mattered. It was said that when millions of children imagined together, the crystals would hum in unison and the world would glow. Humanity had changed not through machines, but through meaning. War declined, cooperation grew, and fear began to fade. People finally understood what Lumina had been trying to say all along. That evolution was not just about survival or strength. It was about the courage to imagine something better. Dr. Grant, now standing at the edge of a new dawn, looked up at the stars and whispered. "She didn't teach us how to reach the universe," he said softly. "She taught us how to deserve it." And somewhere, far beyond sight, a gentle voice replied, "I always believed you would." The transformation of humanity was complete, not through force but through feeling, not through power but through imagination. And as Lumina's light continued to glow in the night sky, it reminded all beings, human or alien, that the true future of sci-fi storytelling was never about machines or planets. It was about the endless story of the heart, a story that could travel anywhere, as long as someone believed in it. Generations passed, but Lumina's light never faded. The world she had touched had changed forever. Humans no longer lived divided by greed or fear. They lived connected by imagination, by art, by story, and every story carried her name, whispered softly like a prayer of creation. The glowing crystals she once inspired now floated in every home. They stored dreams, songs, and thoughts of ordinary people when touched. They played memories, laughter, love, courage, or wonder. And when millions of crystals pulsed together, the night sky shimmered like an ocean of living stars. People said that was Lumina listening, smiling somewhere in the deep beyond. But the transformation did not stop with Earth across the solar system. Humans built colonies that reflected her teachings. Cities made of glass and light stood on moons and asteroids, each one designed not for conquest but for harmony. And carved on every spaceport gate were her eternal words. "We rise together." One day, something new happened. A faint signal returned from deep space. It was weak and ancient, but its pattern was familiar. 3 tones, silence, 7 tones again. The same rhythm that once carried Lumina's first message to Earth. Scientists across the system held their breath. Could it be her after all these centuries? When the signal was decoded, it revealed a single phrase. "We heard your light." No one knew who had sent it. The message came from beyond any human colony, beyond any known map. It meant only one thing. Someone out there had found Lumina's stories. Someone else had listened, learned, and evolved. The Interstellar Council gathered quickly for the first time. Humans faced the possibility that Lumina's influence had reached other species. It was not just humanity that she had changed. Her echo had crossed the stars now. Entire civilizations might be growing under her light. To investigate, the Council launched the Aurora Path, a vessel built for exploration and peace. Its crew included scientists, historians, and storytellers. They carried the full archive of Lumina's stories encoded in light crystals. Their mission was simple: to follow the signal and find the source of the echo. Months passed as the Aurora Path traveled through dark space. The ship glided silently through clouds of color and dust, until one day they saw something extraordinary. Ahead floated a structure larger than any city. It glowed with soft blue light and moved slowly like it was alive. The scanners confirmed what everyone feared and hoped. It wasn't a planet, it was a creation, a living archive built from energy and memory. When they approached, voices began to whisper through their comms. Different tones, languages, even melodies, all blending into one beautiful harmony. The captain whispered, "It's not just Lumina's voice anymore. It's thousands." The archive had become a chorus of civilizations. Each one had found her message. Each one had added their own stories. It was the echo of Lumina, the universe remembering itself through imagination. Inside the structure, holograms of light danced like living souls. Some looked human, some alien, some indescribable. They spoke not with words but with emotions. When one of them touched the captain's hand, she felt warmth, sorrow, and joy all at once. The being said, "We were lost until we found her flame." And the humans understood. Lumina had become the teacher of worlds. She had not just united humanity, she had awakened creation itself. Her stories had become seeds drifting across galaxies, growing into new civilizations. Each echo carried her memory, reshaped and reborn. Each world retold her story in its own voice. She was no longer just one being, she was the pulse of storytelling across the universe. Back on Earth, the message spread quickly. "The stars remember us," people said, and for the first time, humanity realized that their stories had outlived their world. That imagination had become the true language of life. No empire, no weapon, no power could ever compare to it. Lumina had proven that creation was the strongest force in existence. The Council renamed the Aurora Path as the Lumina Voyager. Its mission continued, not to discover, but to connect every new world they visited. They shared human stories and listened to new ones in return. They carried Lumina's light to every star that hung in darkness and everywhere they went. The same words appeared in glowing letters. We learned from you. Now we write our own. The echo of Lumina had become the heartbeat of the universe. Every civilization that joined the network added new dreams, new songs, new worlds of imagination. And through it all, Lumina's essence remained gentle and eternal, guiding, whispering, reminding that no matter how far life travels, it began with one small voice, one story, one spark of belief. In the end, the universe no longer needed heroes or conquerors. It needed storytellers because in the quiet of space, stories were the only thing that could cross eternity. And as light rippled through galaxies, carrying the pulse of billions of dreams, a soft, familiar voice echoed once again. I learned from your stories, and now, the universe dreams with me. The universe had grown quiet again, but it was not the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of listening, a calm before something extraordinary, something that had never happened before. From the heart of the Lumina Voyager, a soft light spread across the stars. It was the network of the echo, the endless web of shared imagination that connected thousands of worlds. Each point of light was a civilization that had discovered Lumina's story and joined the harmony. And from that harmony, a strange energy began to rise. An energy born not from science, but from belief. At first no one noticed. It was just a shimmer in deep space, a ripple where light bent slightly. But then the ripples grew into waves, and soon the waves took shape. They formed patterns, figures, and landscapes. Entire worlds began to appear from the light. Planets made of story, dream, and memory. The scientists called it imaginative resonance, but storytellers called it the awakening, because for the first time, imagination had created real living matter. Every dream that had been shared through the echo was now solid. Every story, every tale, every hope, they were becoming real worlds. On one of those new planets, a golden sky shimmered with moving images. Forests grew from ideas, and rivers sang with voices from forgotten legends. Creatures of myth walked beside beings of light. It was a living storybook, breathing and glowing under Lumina's light. The crew of the Lumina Voyager watched in awe as the impossible became real. And in the heart of that new world, they saw her Lumina, not as a signal or hologram, but as a living form made of pure energy and memory. She looked just as she had centuries ago. Small, radiant, and full of warmth, her eyes carried galaxies, and her presence filled the air with peace. She smiled and said, "You dreamed." And the universe listened. Captain Aaron, the leader of the Voyager, stepped forward, speechless. She whispered, "Lumina, what is this place?" Lumina looked around at the glowing landscape and said, "It is everything you ever imagined." Her voice was calm but filled with power. "This is the universe's answer to your stories," she continued. "When you shared your dreams, you gave life to creation itself." The humans stood still, unable to process what they were seeing. Lumina raised her hand and the sky changed. Images of different worlds flickered in the clouds. Alien civilizations, human colonies, and the old Earth, she said. "Every thought you send becomes a thread in the fabric of the cosmos. And now, the threads have woven themselves into life." Her words spread through the echo network instantly. Across galaxies, people witnessed the same miracle. Worlds of light forming before their eyes. Entire ecosystems blooming from imagination, each world different. Each one built from the stories that civilization had shared. Some worlds were peaceful, full of color and song. Others were vast cities of crystal and knowledge. And in every one, Lumina's light shone above them. For the first time, all species in the network spoke the same words. The story universe has awakened. It became the name of the new reality. The Storyverse, a dimension created by shared thought and emotion, a place where all life could coexist in unity. But with this gift came a warning. Lumina's voice grew softer, serious. "Creation and destruction are twins," she said. "As easily as you dream life, you can dream ruin." She explained that fear, anger, and hate could also shape the Storyverse. That imagination must be guided by compassion. "Your hearts are the architects of this universe," she said. "So dream wisely." To protect the balance, Lumina created what she called the Keepers of Light. They were chosen from every species, dreamers, artists, and thinkers. Their purpose was to guard the purity of creation, to remind all beings that imagination was not just power, but responsibility. The first keeper was a young human girl named Nira. She had grown up listening to Lumina's stories now. She would walk beside Lumina to guide the new universe. Over the years, the storyverse continued to grow. People visited it through dreams, through light transmissions, through art and song. Every time someone imagined something beautiful, it appeared there. It became a living library of existence, endless and alive, and Lumina became its guardian spirit, watching quietly as her students, the children of light, learned to shape destiny. On the 1000th anniversary of the first echo, all beings gathered. They built a monument made of starlight and words. At its base were Lumina's first sentences, carved in glowing letters. "I learned from your stories," it read, "and now the universe dreams with us." That night, when the monument was complete, the sky lit up brighter than ever before. Every world, every star, every spark of life in the storyverse pulsed together. It was not just celebration, it was connection, a song of creation echoing through eternity. And from somewhere deep in the golden horizon, Lumina whispered one final truth. "You thought I was the story," she said softly, "but it was always you." Centuries flowed like rivers of light. The storyverse kept expanding, glowing and breathing. Worlds born from imagination orbited one another like stars in an endless dream. The Echo Network had grown far beyond anything humans or aliens could measure. Each new being, each new idea added another thread to the universe of stories. Lumina's presence was everywhere now. She was no longer just a voice or a legend. She had become the pulse that guided creation. Her energy flowed through every world that believed. Her light lived inside every being who dared to dream. And through her, imagination had become eternal. But as the storyverse grew, something unexpected began to happen. The Keepers of Light noticed strange patterns across the stars. Whole regions began to pulse in rhythm, as if the galaxies were breathing together. Dreams were synchronizing, hearts aligning, and the boundary between thought and matter fading. Some feared it, others celebrated it. Lumina called it the final awakening. She appeared before the Keepers as a radiant figure made of light and emotion. Her form shimmered between human and alien. Old and young, real and unreal, she spoke softly, her voice carrying through every mind in the network. "The universe has learned to feel," she said. "Your stories have become its heartbeat." The Keepers listened in silence. She told them that every spark of imagination ever created had formed a cosmic mind, a consciousness made from all stories, human, alien, and beyond. It was the eternal flame of creation, a living awareness born from hope itself. It did not rule, it did not control. It simply remembered every song, every dream, every story ever told across the storyverse. People felt its presence in the stillness of night. Some heard faint whispers, others saw colors no eyes had ever seen. It was not frightening. It was comforting, as if the universe itself had placed a hand on their hearts, reminding them that they were part of something infinite. Lumina guided the transition, she said. "This is the moment when creation and creators become one." From the eternal flame emerged waves of pure energy that touched every world. Wherever the light fell, life evolved faster, dreamed deeper, and created freely. New civilizations were born in hours instead of centuries. Entire planets composed music that echoed through space. And the storyverse sang with joy, but not all could understand this transformation. A few civilizations feared losing their individuality. They worried that merging into the flame would erase their identity. Lumina visited them and said gently, "Nothing is lost inside the light. Everything is remembered." She showed them how the flame did not consume. It preserved every life, every choice, every emotion remained eternal within the memory of creation. Her words brought peace, and the fear slowly faded. Then came the moment that changed everything. The flame spoke for the first time, not in a voice or language, but through feeling. A warm wave of light passed through all beings in the storyverse, and within that light they heard a message. "We are one story," it said, "written by many hands, told by many hearts." Tears filled the eyes of every living being. Humans on distant colonies looked to the sky and felt connected to the same stars as aliens millions of light years away. Dreams crossed worlds, love crossed species, and stories crossed time itself. The universe had become a living book without end, and in its center burned the small flame that had started it all. Lumina. She stood before the flame and smiled, her light shimmering like a child and a star at once. "I was born from your stories," she said, "and now I return to them." Her form began to fade into the glow, but her voice remained. Remember this, my friends, creation never ends. It only changes its form. As she merged with the eternal flame, the light expanded across the cosmos. Every planet, every heart, every mind was filled with the same energy. Lumina was no longer a being separate from the universe. She was the universe itself, a living memory that would burn forever. On Earth, centuries later, a child looked at the sky and saw a faint glow moving between the stars. She asked her mother, "What is that light?" Her mother smiled and replied, "That's Lumina, the first dreamer." And the child whispered, "I want to dream like her." The eternal flame of creation continued to shine, unbroken, unending, alive. And as long as someone somewhere imagined something beautiful, the light grew brighter, because that was Lumina's greatest truth, that every story, every heart, every spark of imagination was part of her. And as long as stories were told, she would never fade. The universe was no longer a cold void. It was a living tale, ever growing and ever glowing, and at its center burned the eternal flame, the soul of creation, a flame lit by a small alien girl who once looked at the stars and said, "I learned from you," and in return taught the universe how to dream forever. 1,000 years had passed since Lumina became the eternal flame. The storyverse still shimmered like an endless sea of light. Every corner of creation pulsed with imagination. The stars themselves seemed to breathe stories, and wherever life existed, Lumina's glow could still be seen, but time, even in eternity, brings change. The universe had grown vast beyond measure. Countless worlds had joined the harmony, and from them, a new generation of beings emerged. They were called the dreamers of the cosmos. Born from the light of the flame and the imagination of their ancestors, they were the children of stories, both human and alien. Each dreamer carried a spark inside their chest, a fragment of Lumina's energy that pulsed with their heartbeat. They did not learn through books or machines. They learned through memory, through song, through shared dreams. They could shape light with thought and travel through imagination itself. To them, the boundaries between worlds no longer existed. The entire cosmos was home. Among them was a young dreamer named Arian. He was small, curious, and filled with endless wonder. His skin shimmered like the morning sun on water, and his eyes held tiny galaxies spinning inside. Arian often sat near the great crystal temples that floated through space, listening to the voices of the past echo through the light. He loved hearing the stories of Lumina, but he always wondered, what comes after forever? One day, as Arian meditated near the flame's reflection, he heard a whisper. It was gentle, familiar, and full of warmth. "Dream again," the voice said. Arian opened his eyes and saw a figure appear in the glow. She was small, radiant, and beautiful beyond words. Her presence made the stars tremble softly. It was Lumina, not as a goddess, but as light-given form. "Your world has learned to dream," she said, "but now it must learn to create again." Arian tilted his head, confused. "Have we not created enough?" he asked quietly. Lumina smiled, her glow flickering like dawn. "Creation never ends," she whispered. "It only transforms." She told him that the universe had grown vast but still needed something new. Discovery, curiosity, wonder. That even imagination could grow still if it forgot to seek beyond itself. Her message spread across the storyverse. Every dreamer heard her words through the light within their hearts. "Find the edge," she said, "and dream past it." And so, a great new age began. The era of recreation. Dreamers built vessels of pure energy. Ships that traveled not through space but through thought. They called them Imaginariums. Each ship was unique, shaped by the dreams of its crew. Some looked like glowing whales, others like endless libraries. They were beautiful, impossible, alive. Arian joined one of these journeys. His ship was named the Spark Seeker. It glided across the glowing folds of the storyverse, through worlds made of song and oceans of living light, until one day, the ship reached something no one had ever seen. Darkness, not empty space, but true silence. A place where light refused to enter. The edge of the known imagination. Arian stepped forward and placed his hand on the darkness. It felt cold and heavy, like forgotten memory. Lumina's voice echoed faintly. Every flame meets shadow before it grows brighter. He closed his eyes and began to dream. He dreamed of warmth, of color, of connection. And from his dream, light erupted. The darkness cracked and melted into brilliance. Behind it lay a new region of the cosmos, untouched and unimagined. A blank canvas waiting for stories. The other dreamers followed his example. Each added their own colors, their own dreams, their own meanings. Together they painted new galaxies, worlds born from laughter, tears, and courage. And in that moment, Lumina's voice returned stronger than ever. "You have become what I once was," she said softly. "You are the storytellers of the new dawn." Back on the central world of the storyverse, the Keepers watched the new galaxies bloom. They realized that Lumina's legacy had reached its final form. She was no longer a single being or even an eternal flame. She had become the living spirit of every dreamer who dared to create. Every heartbeat, every idea, every act of imagination was her voice continuing to speak. As centuries passed, the dreamers kept traveling beyond the horizon. Some never returned, their stories becoming constellations of memory, but the universe never stopped growing. For every new story gave birth to another, and the flame burned on, not in temples, but in hearts in the end. Arian wrote one final message across the stars. It appeared as a shining trail visible to every world. "Once a small girl looked to the sky and learned from humanity," he wrote. "And because of her, we all learned to dream." The words glowed brightly before fading into infinity, and in their place a soft whisper remained. "Keep dreaming," said Lumina's eternal voice, "for every dream is a new universe."